The courtroom silence was profound, broken only by the faint hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. It was the kind of silence that filled every corner of the room, that pressed down like an unseen weight, making each breath feel deliberate and heavy. Rows of reporters sat crammed into the gallery, their notebooks ready, fingers hovering over keyboards. Cameras stood at attention like soldiers, their lens trained on the polished wooden bench where Dr. Olivia Hartwell was about to preside. This was the moment the world had been waiting for, the trial that had captured global attention. It wasn't just any trial. It was the trial where justice itself seemed to take on a life of its own, embodied by a woman who had become a paradox, revered, scandalized, and now vindicated. Dr. Olivia Hartwell was no stranger to attention. Once hailed as a prodigy in the world of criminal psychology, she had built a career out of decoding the minds of the world's most dangerous criminals. Her television specials, where she dissected high-profile cases, had captivated millions, turning her into a household name. Olivia wasn't just brilliant, she was magnetic, with an incisive wit that cut through deception like a scalpel. But for all her accolades, the past 6 months had redefined her life and reputation in ways no one could have anticipated. 6 months ago, a cold November rain had slicked the streets of the city. Olivia, weary from a late meeting, had been driving home when flashing blue lights appeared in her rearview mirror. She had pulled over, rolling her window down to the chill air, and waited as two officers approached. At first, she was calm, cooperative. But when they informed her she was being detained for resisting arrest, despite her confusion and lack of resistance, things escalated. The exchange turned heated, her protests ignored. Soon, she found herself handcuffed, her credentials dismissed, her carefully curated composure unraveling in the storm. It wasn't until she saw the camera phones of bystanders capturing the scene that the gravity of the moment hit her. The footage went viral by morning. There she was, soaking wet, shouting, makeup streaked down her face. A woman who had spent her life commanding respect, now reduced to a tabloid headline. The media pounced. For weeks, theories and rumors ran wild. What was Olivia hiding? Was her arrest justified? Did her fame make her believe she was untouchable? Amid the chaos, Olivia maintained her silence, retreating from the public eye as her career hung in the balance. Then, the real story began to emerge. A civil rights lawyer came forward, uncovering a troubling history of misconduct tied to the officers who had arrested her. The charges against her were dropped, and public opinion began to shift. Protests erupted, her name chanted in the streets as a symbol of systemic injustice. Yet the ultimate twist came when Olivia was reinstated as a judge, a position she hadn't held in years, and assigned the most ironic case imaginable, presiding over the trial of the very officers who had arrested her. As the heavy wooden doors of the courtroom swung open, every head turned to see her enter. Olivia's presence was magnetic, commanding, as it always had been. The black silk of her robes moved like liquid with each step, her heels clicking on the polished floor in a deliberate rhythm. Her face was composed, her gaze unwavering, but beneath her calm exterior was a storm of emotions. She had faced countless challenges in her life, but none as personal or as public as this. When she reached the bench, she paused, scanning the room. The gallery was packed. Reporters, activists, curious onlookers. The defendants sat at the defense table, their expressions a mix of defiance and unease. Olivia took her seat, her movements precise, almost ritualistic. "This court is now in session," she declared, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. The trial began with the prosecution's opening statements, outlining a damning case against the officers. Witnesses took the stand, describing a pattern of corruption, coercion, and abuse of power. Olivia listened intently, her expression unreadable. Her reputation for impartiality was on the line, and she knew the world was watching for any sign of bias. But as the defense presented its case, the narrative began to shift. The officers, initially painted as villains, started to appear as products of a deeply flawed system. They spoke of impossible quotas, pressure from superiors, and a culture that prioritized results over ethics. Their testimony struck a chord with Olivia, stirring memories she had buried long ago, moments when she, too, had been complicit in a broken system, remaining silent to protect her career. The turning point came during a recess. Alone in her chambers, Olivia stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her robe, once a symbol of authority and purpose, now felt like a weight. Memories of her arrest flooded back. The rain, the humiliation, the helplessness. But alongside those memories came her father's voice, a civil rights lawyer who had spent his life fighting for justice. He had always told her that justice wasn't about punishment, it was about balance, about mending what was broken. When Olivia returned to the courtroom, her decision was clear. "I have considered the evidence carefully," she began, her voice steady but firm. She acknowledged the officers' misconduct and found them guilty, but her verdict didn't stop there. Their sentences included mandatory reform programs and community service, aimed at addressing the root causes of their actions. Olivia also issued a blistering critique of the police department, calling for systemic changes and independent oversight to prevent future abuses. The room was silent as her words hung in the air. Some in the gallery nodded in approval, others frowned, dissatisfied. The media reaction was immediate and polarized. Some hailed her decision as a masterstroke of justice, a nuanced approach that acknowledged complexity. Others accused her of leniency, of letting personal feelings cloud her judgment. But Olivia wasn't concerned with public opinion anymore. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of clarity, a peace that came from knowing she had done what was right, not what was easy. As she stepped out of the courthouse into the blinding flashes of cameras, a reporter called out, "Judge Hartwell, do you have any final words?" She paused, turned, and offered a faint smile. "Justice isn't about winning," she said. "It's about healing." With that, she walked away, leaving the world to grapple with the ripples of her decision, a story that was far from over, but one that had already begun to change the conversation. 4-0.